With all of the talk of new players and the revamped offense, we've talked a little bit about the defense and how important it is for the defense to be good to start off the season for the Chicago Bears. We're also going to talk about why Montez Sweat has to deliver, importantly, in the 2024 season. We're also going to look at the biggest things ahead of Braxton Jones heading into that 2024 season. And Caleb Williams talks about what he learned most from minicamp. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today, y'all. So I want to start off talking about Montez Sweat. And I've talked a lot about the defense and how important it is for the defense to really pick up on where they left off from last season. But a big part of that does hinge on Montez Sweat, especially on that defensive line. Montez Sweat, with that addition last year, made every part of that defensive line considerably better. We never really got to see a long-term period of him and Yannick Ngakoue on opposite sides to see if that would have helped Yannick kind of stand up and be a little bit better than what he was at the beginning of that season as well. But overall, you really are looking at Montez Sweat to really step in and to be a huge part of the Chicago Bears. When you look at his season overall between the two teams, the Commanders and the Chicago Bears, he had 38 solo tackles, 12 and a half sacks, 3 forced fumbles in that time as well. And that's huge when you look at that impact that he had there. And that has to continue for him and for the Chicago Bears. You want to see him pick up on so much when it comes down to it. And he had overall 57 tackles on the season as well. Really big numbers for him with Montez Sweat. But it's kind of more important than that. And this is something that we kind of buried the lead on. When you look at the 5 biggest deals in Chicago Bears history, right? History. And it's crazy how most of these deals really happen over the last handful of years. So as far as average annual salary, right? There's some deals that were bigger as far as the overall number of money. But when you look at the average annual salary, Montez Sweat has the highest average annual salary of any Chicago Bears contract in the history of the franchise. Followed by him is Khalil Mack. Montez Sweat has an average annual salary of $24.5 million per year. After him, Khalil Mack at $23.5. After him is DJ Moore with $20 million. After him is Jalen Johnson with $19 million. And then you have Jay Cutler with $18.8 million. Oh, and by the way, Tremaine Edmonds is right below Jay Cutler with $18 million. The Chicago Bears, which have historically been known as a cheap franchise, rightfully so when you look at the fact that most of our big deals happened within the last decade, basically, is when it comes down to it, right? When you look at that, that is an important part of how they bet on Montez Sweat as well. When you look at the overall largest deal signed in Bears history, which is the overall number of the amount of money, at number 1 you have Khalil Mack with 6 years, $140 million. That was signed in September of 2018. You got Jay Cutler in 2014 with 7 years, $126 million. Then you have Montez Sweat with 4 years, $98 million, signed just last year. Julius Peppers in 2010 with 6 years, $84 million. And then Jalen Johnson, who just signed his deal this year at 4 years, $76 million. The biggest contracts in Bears history happened basically within the last 14 years. And that's a lot to be said. But when you look at it, Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, them being in the top 5 of largest contracts in franchise history means that how much they saw them as being anchors on that defense. If Ryan Poles looked at this defense and did not think this was a defense that cannot compete for being one of the better defenses in the league, you wouldn't have paid guys that much money because you would have needed more to flesh out that defense. Now, it's a combination of having some really good rookie scale contracts still on this team. Most of our secondaries on rookie scale contracts, except for Jalen Johnson and Kevin Byard, right? Everybody else is on basically rookie scale deals. You look at our linebacking core, yeah, those are TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds are pretty big deals. You got Jack Sanborn there. And on the defensive line, you got the veteran in Andrew Billings. You got DeMarcus Walker there. And you got Zach Pickens, Javon Dexter there as well. So, paying this type of money really does say, to me, that Ryan Poles believes in what this defense is capable of. And a large part of that does hinge on Montez Sweat. Is it all on him? No. Our linebacking core, our secondary is good enough to where they should be able to perform regardless. But when you look at how much better those position groups played and the synergy between those position groups after the addition of Montez Sweat, there's enough reason Montez Sweat has to perform this year. I'm not going to put a number on it, a number of sacks or anything like that, because it really depends on how well the rest of the defense looks, right? Because if Montez Sweat is getting a lot of pressure, but they have to double team him, which frees up Javon Dexter, DeMarcus Walker, Austin Booker potentially to do some things on that defensive line, then okay, cool. But Montez has to be everything that we flashed last year, not flashed, everything that he was last year for the Chicago Bears after we acquired him, and maybe even step that up a little bit, because overall we're hoping that this defense is also better than what it was last year, and that the coaching, the coordinators, the play calling is also able to pick up on where it left off from last year. So this is a hugely important part of the game, of course, but Montez Sweat sits at, whether it's right or wrong, people are going to look at Montez Sweat and see what he brings. And for that, and I've said this before, you have an anchor in every level of it. You got Montez Sweat on that defensive line. You got Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards in the linebacking core. You got Jalen Johnson with his big deal in the secondary. We have some of our largest contracts are those three players, and so because of that, the expectation for them has to be extremely high. And Montez, I've talked a lot about Jalen, especially with the new deal. I've talked some about Tremaine Edmonds and him come and showing that last year, the start of the season and the injury, the slow start, that he can come out and perform much better this year, especially with TJ Edwards performing the way that he has. But also Montez Sweat, it's not that he disappointed at all. No, it's actually contrary to that. He played so well for the Chicago Bears and had such an impact for us that we absolutely need to see him come in, be able to pick up off on that, and the defense as a whole be able to do that as well. And so Montez Sweat sits at a very important position. A lot of eyes are going to be on what Montez Sweat does, and we're going to see if he does bring it. I have faith in it, and you guys know, you've been watching this channel for long enough, you know I have faith in this defense. That's not even the question there. I have faith in what this defense can do, but they got to show it. But talking about showing it, there's another player that also has to show it. This is a big season for Braxton Jones, and we've talked a lot about the season ahead for Braxton Jones. The fact that the Bears did not go out and find a replacement for him in this draft or even in free agency, and it brings a lot. Overall, the Bears' offensive line has a lot to prove. It's not just Braxton Jones, but Braxton Jones does sit in a place where we want to see improvement from him, of course. But then when you look at it as well, at the Bears' offensive line, the offensive line right now, PFF ranked the Bears' offensive line at 28th overall. That's not good. And so it comes down to some of the other, we talked about Tevin Jenkins, we talked about Nate Davis, right? We talked about the fact that those two guys have a lot of things that they need to show this year. Nate Davis, if he wants to remain a starter, has to be available. Tevin Jenkins has to stay healthy if he even wants any type of hope of signing a new contract with the Chicago Bears. And there is a huge possibility Tevin Jenkins could be playing his last season as a Chicago Bear. And you could be saying the same thing about Braxton Jones going into next season, because, listen, this may be a year where if he can show enough, the Bears look to extend him, or they look to let him finish out the last year of his rookie deal and maybe look to find an upgrade in next offseason. The thing that Braxton Jones has to do, we know the bull rush, right? That's something that's been well talked about, well documented. We understand the bull rush. Braxton Jones has overall been solid. But one thing has definitely stood out a lot as far as the negative aspects of Braxton Jones' game, and that is the penalties, right? As a rookie, he had 12 penalties, which was an 11.7% rate, which was ninth worst among left tackles with at least 400 snaps. And the two that were above him didn't even start in the following year in 2024. Braxton Jones did. Then when you look at it as well, Braxton Jones last year, a 12.6% penalty rate, which was the fourth worst among qualified tackles. The only players that were worse than him, the Walker Little, Trevor Penning, and Mekhi Becton were worse than him. And it's a chance that none of those guys are starters either in this upcoming season. Braxton Jones is on a bad trajectory, right? And again, this is not to say that he's horrible, but when you look at starting tackles, it breeds a lot it leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to Braxton Jones, because he has just not improved his game overall in the ways that we have needed it to improve based off the flashes that he did show his rookie year. He's almost that same player. And in this game, you have to improve. You have to develop every single year. Now, some could say that we weren't in the best situation. Some could say because the offensive line, the overall weakness there, the weakness at center, the bad play calling that could have absolutely put the offensive line in a much worse position. We understand all that. But this is going into this season. It's important for Braxton Jones to be able to clean up that aspect. The bull rush or not, yes, you want to see him pick that up, but he's been solid enough without it. And going into your third year now, you're not the rookie anymore. You're approaching the place of being a veteran in a lot of ways, right? And so because of that, we got to get it together with Braxton Jones. Braxton has to show something. He's another reason why there's so much doubt across that offensive line for the Chicago Bears. There's doubt all up and down it because the Bears' offensive line just has not improved. Where it's good that we got tackles ranked highly by PFF. We got guards ranked highly by PFF. We got all these things, but yet the fact that they still doubt the performance of the offensive line overall, I think tells a lot about it. Yes, there is some room for optimism. Yes, there's some room for growth. Ryan Bates, Coleman Shelton, and we'll see what happens. There's a possibility that one of those guys end up passing up Nate Davis because of his inability to stay on the football field. But this is a Bears offensive line that has tons of questions going into it. And me and C-Dub talked a little bit about it. The offensive line not performing well, right? And we're talking about consistently. Let's be consistently competent to good, right? Let's do that step first. Yes, we got players that look like they're going to be damn good. Darnell Wright looks like the right pick, right? Tevin Jenkins, we know what he can bring when he's healthy. Nate Davis, question. Braxton Jones, a question in some areas, right? The center position, we're still trying to figure out who's going to be that starting center for sure. And yeah, we got some depth pieces behind those guys of a lot of players that can play multiple positions on that offensive line. But the offensive line, it comes down to how well do they protect Caleb Williams in this rookie year. We got to protect him better than what we did Justin Fields. There's just no question about that. And if you can't, especially now that this Chicago Bears front office has their quarterback, if you're not protecting that quarterback, you got to look at revamping. And when you look at the last 2 years for Justin Fields, this offensive line, again, not everybody that's on this team now was on that offensive line, but the Bears offensive line gave up 99 sacks just to Justin Fields over the last 2 years. 99 sacks in the last 2 years to just Justin Fields, right? That's not even counting Tyson Bagent. I think he got a lot of sacks in there as well in the games that he started. So that still brings about a lot of questions. Tyson Bagent sacked 5 times in this time as well. That's 104 sacks in 2 seasons. 104. It has to be better protection for Caleb Williams, and that needs to be something that I'm sure Ryan Poles and this team is overall evaluating. You do not, and not to say that they wanted it when it was Justin Fields. I'm not saying that. But the last thing that you want is your new quarterback that you brought in here, your quarterback that you have now drafted, that you traded away Justin Fields for, that you revamped the offense for, brought in a new offensive staff. You don't want that guy running for his life. And that is part of why the better scheming and Shane Waldron and things are definitely going to help as well. But the play of this offensive line is hugely important to the success of this season as well for the Chicago Bears, and we cannot understate that at all. If the Bears' offensive line does not perform, this season can go from a promising season to a season of nothing but PTSD for Chicago Bears fans, and they'll be saying once again in the national media, whether right or wrong, the Bears still can't develop a quarterback because they can't protect one. And so we got to do that. And Braxton Jones has to step up as well as everybody else on this offensive line. Darnell Wright is probably the one that I feel the most. Tevin, I feel super confident in Tevin when he's on the football field. You got to stay on the football field, Tevin. But I would not be surprised, and this is something that eventually as the season goes on that we need to look at, is how much turnover is there on the Chicago Bears offensive line from wherever it finishes this year to next season. Because you could very well be looking at Tevin Jenkins no longer a Chicago Bear. Nate Davis no longer a starter even if he is on the roster. Braxton Jones potentially no longer a starter if he's on the roster. Ryan Bates, Coleman Shelton could end up being, if they both stay around, depth pieces because hopefully we go out and find our center of the future in next year's draft. This is in a lot of ways the last chance for a lot of these players on this offensive line to prove that they can be starters in the future for the Chicago Bears. And so that is why when you hear kind of the pessimism and concern around the ability to protect Caleb Williams, it's all legitimate because you have an offensive line that gave up 104 sacks in 2 years. That's tough. That's tough. And so hopefully they're able to do that. Hopefully they're able to surprise a lot of people, but you got to be able to protect Caleb. And with that said, that gives us to our last topic of the day, and that's Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, who has talked about his progress over the mini camp so far, and he's very honest on it, saying this: with all the reps that we've been able to get and obtain, it's just been huge. It's just like today. I feel like progression-wise, we're able to throw a little bit more with anticipation, and that was a small step for me. I love the fact that Caleb Williams has the ability, and again, it's all words right now, but does have a level of awareness over himself and what he holds himself to. And that's a good thing, right? I've said before, the test of a quarterback isn't just if you can avoid mistakes, especially as a rookie. It's down to how you come back from your mistakes. How do you learn and grow from your mistakes as a rookie quarterback, which is the hugely important thing. And while some Bears fans want to see a mistake-free Caleb Williams because of the generational label or using the C.J. Stroud season, he's going to go through those mistakes, and how he learns from them, how quickly he can stay ahead of the development because of that, that's an important thing as well. And Caleb Williams also saying this: going against a top 5 defense, which we definitely hope that it's a top 5 defense. I got a lot of great guys on the opposite side of the ball. This is tough. Playing QB is tough. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's been easier or anything like that. It's been working my tail off, getting after it day in and day out. And that's what it is. The chemistry that Caleb Williams has shown with Rome Odunze, great. I've talked about what that means for the future. The chemistry with DJ Moore, great. Talked about what that means for the present. The fact that him and Keenan Allen came into the offseason, into the training camp, and Keenan Allen said, hey, it's not there yet, but trust, it's going to get there. It's huge because it seems like it actually started getting there towards the end of that. So we need to continually see that development, of course, from Caleb Williams and from this Bears offense. It's not going to be a finished product either. I know a lot of people would love to see it. Hell, I would love to see this team just hit the ground running and be exactly what we needed to be. But the fact of the matter is it's probably going to take, there's going to be rough patches and rough spots for the Chicago Bears offense because of all the newness here. But Caleb Williams, who they've already given the whole playbook to, which is a good thing, right? They're not spoon feeding him the playbook. It's no, this is your team. This is the playbook. Take it, learn from it. I love those aspects of it, right? That's what you want to see from this team. But you got to continually grow. You got to learn from those mistakes. And when you go through it, you got to keep growing and showing and growing. And so, whoa, is that a pause? Is that maybe? Nonetheless, so, Caleb, the awareness that he has over his situation, the awareness that he has over where he is across his development, knowing that it is important that he learns from those mistakes. It is important that he put in that work on top of just the football field or the football aspect of it. You want to gain the respect of the people in your locker room. It's been a long time coming. Like the hopes, this isn't on Caleb, but the hopes of Bears fans to have a quarterback that we look as is truly franchise-changing quarterback. This goes back decades. This goes back almost lifetimes, right? Generations, right? Justin Fields wasn't it. He wasn't it. It is what it is. Mitch wasn't it either. Jay Cutler showed some damn good flashes, had some damn good seasons, and put up some damn good numbers. But ultimately, whether it was the team or whatever, we didn't get it done, right? So this, when you look at the lineage, right, of how we've gone from Rex to Kyle Orton, sure there was somebody else in between there, to Jay Cutler, to Mitch Trubisky, to Justin Fields. Like, this is a big part of why the Chicago Bears are so anxious about Justin Fields having success, because guess what? As a franchise, we have not had it. And we keep looking and we keep going back to the drawing board. And hopefully we also stop the history of the Chicago Bears drafting a quarterback and then the coach getting fired the year after that, and then we start everything all over again, right? We need to have some continuity with this team. And part of that continuity needs to come, of course, it starts with the quarterback. So let's hope that this is a sign of things going in the right direction for the Chicago Bears. But we still got things that we got big question marks coming into, and the offensive line is one of the huge ones there. Of course, health and all those things play a big part in it and role in it as well. But we need to see the success from this team, not because we just feel entitled to it or just because this Bears fan base is thirsty, which is it is, but because at some point, the ship has to start being corrected. It has to start being corrected at some point in time. And let's hope that point in time is starting to come right now for the Chicago Bears. Let's hope that that's the case, man. But guys, thank you so much. That's my time for today. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, chicagobearcentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.